Bill's beer at the time, as everybody knows, is cheap beer. The cheaper the better, and it was usually Schmidt's.
Bill never bought an expensive beer. He always bought a cheap beer.
I don't know where Mom would get the beer. I remember returning the beer bottles. I remember the beer bottles all had puzzles on the bottom. I think they call it Lucky Beer. I don't know where, but it all had cheap beer written on it. Also, he would go into the tavern and always order a cheap beer. And I remember he was in St. Louis.
I was in University of Rolla, Columbia for a week and a half. And after the conference was over, workshop was over, I went back to St. Louis, waiting for a flight home. It was an evening flight, so I had a day to kill in St. Louis. And I like zoos, so I went out to the St. Louis Zoo. And I wandered around the zoo, and about noontime I got thirsty, so I headed for the center of the St. Louis Zoo, where they had a big bunch of concession stands. And there were 5 or 6 lines of people lined up to get food and drink and whatever. And I'm standing in line, and about 2 lines over I hear this familiar voice say, "I'll have a cheap beer." I look over, and honest to God, there was my friend Bill in St. Louis. I had no idea he was anywhere near me, and he had no idea I was back there.
He came out of the tavern with Alan Howard, and we chatted in the St. Louis Zoo for a while.
Moving from over in Kelso to this house, and got a Radcliffe's warehouse sales truck with a liftgate on it, and so I was going to get that, and Bill and Conrad said, well, we're going to have to get some beer to reward. You know, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I gave them some money. And so we're driving along, and lo and behold, they come and they honk, they've got the beer.
Odine pulled alongside, put out his hand. I was driving the truck, so Bill handed him a beer. And Odine almost drove off the road. He says, "You bought Michelob?" Bill said, "Well, I didn't have to pay for it, you did."
They thought it was great fun that they took the money instead of buying Bill's usual cheap beer. They had bought the most expensive, the Michelob they could get, because it was my money. And they
You know, a lot is said about Bill and cheap beer, but the man truly enjoyed good beer. And he loved a Hefeweizen, and he loved a porter, a good porter. And I think he enjoyed, you know, he'd joke about cheap wine, but he also was a pretty good connoisseur too.